Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by GrandTheftWorld.com and the fine members who make it all possible over at GrandTheftWorld.com in the members area. You might click that after we get into the show. Check it out. All right, so we're going to be here for the next 6 or 7 hours discussing this week's past news, juxtaposing it to some contextual history, some primary sources and documents. This week, we saw that Ukraine, they got their Oscar for best performance. Sean Penn showed up. He pulls an Oscar out of his bag. He gives it to Zelensky. Oh, I hope you someday bring this back to California.
Hi, Sean. Nice to meet you.
Great to see you.
You're looking good.
Thank you. This is for you.
Oh, Sean.
Yes.
No.
Please.
That is yours.
No, I feel terrible outside. It's just a symbolic, silly thing.
Yes, but
if I know this is here with you, then I'll feel better and stronger for the fight.
It's so great to honor, but until we will.
When you win, bring it back to Malibu.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
It just shows you, wag the dog sense, what a pageant it is out there in that Ukraine war front. It wasn't just Ben Stiller who made the visit. Sean Penn, he's got to get in there and show his nouveau eugenics body, where he has this physique of a 20-year-old that he'd never had when he was a 20-year-old. It's amazing, the PR and the repertoire and the rhetoric and the pageantry that they bring together to get people to give billions and billions and billions of dollars into that war effort. Now, as part of that war effort, there's another story. This week, we saw the implosion of FTX. FTX is a trading platform for cryptocurrencies. Now, it happens that there's a young multi-billionaire, like a $20 billion kid that's behind the FTX. And FTX became the second donor behind a guy that most people can't name, named George Soros. So the top two donors to the Democratic Party, Soros and the guy who's running FTX. Well, as it turns out, FTX no longer exists. Billions of dollars are missing. Last I heard, the guy running from FTX, he's in the Bahamas looking to go to Dubai where he can avoid extradition. So we're going to follow that money and go from FTX to maybe the Democratic Party, to Biden, to Ukraine, and back to FTX. And you might see a little convection current of criminality.
FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried was the largest donor to the Democrat Party, second to George Soros, for the spurious 2022 midterms. Nearly $40 million, which reportedly came from crypto donations to Ukraine. FTX was partnered with the World Economic Forum as one of Klaus Schwab's stakeholders. FTX's founder reportedly used a secret backdoor to steal over $1 billion from the customers of the now defunct cryptocurrency exchange. But there's more to the story than Sam Bankman-Fried and a money laundering slush fund for the failing Democrat Party. The CEO for FTX was Caroline Ellison, whose father is Glenn Ellison, head of the MIT Economics Department. Glenn Ellison hired Gary Gensler to head the cryptocurrency department at MIT in 2018. And in 2021, the Biden administration nominated Gary Gensler as the chair of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, who has been laser focused on gaining control of cryptocurrency. While the SEC has been routinely combative towards cryptos, they have treated FTX like family, causing many to argue that FTX was being groomed and set up by the SEC to monopolize the crypto market.
FTX was an exchange that had a bright sheen on it. It was led by a CEO that was often on Capitol Hill and being photographed with regulators and lawmakers. And so there was this sense that the exchange was very buttoned up.
Cryptocurrency has the potential to strip power from the central banking system, and that makes it a major threat. As this story unfolds, don't be surprised if this mess becomes the catalyst for government overreach into cryptocurrencies.
The Journal reporting the CEO allegedly using customer money from FTX to fund risky bets at his other company, a hedge fund called Alameda.
Many people believe that this will definitely set back the crypto industry for years.
You know, this is a tale as old as time to some degree. Some young, charismatic guy in Bermuda shorts with the floppy hair charmed the 20 best investors in the world.
Rebecca, the big question here, was this a mistake by the founders or a crime?
Well, that's a question the regulators will ultimately have to answer here.
But we got more stories, not just that. Amnesty was a topic talked about last week, and we discussed the definition of amnesty. It involves an apology. It also involves crimes committed, but we're going to leave the crimes aside and just go for the apology. Tim Robbins is the first person from the Hollywood set to come out and apologize for the actions that he took to chastise, maybe to make fun of. We'll learn about that more later, but I'm just surprised that out of all the people who could have chosen to use the apology as a platform, you got Tim Robbins out there, at least setting an example for other people to maybe consider that amnesty and the hollow ring that whole request had on those who had sacrificed a great deal during the pandemic because of those other people who said you must sacrifice whether you want to or not, right?
And now Tim Robbins, the actor, former lover of Susan Sarandon, I don't think they ever got married, but partner sounds like they were gay together, but they weren't.
Yeah.
Maybe they were. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what's underneath that tie. Tim Robbins and the Lost Art of Finding Common Ground. And it says, the star of films like The Player and Bull Durham opens up about 2 tough years of pandemic politics and worries society is purposely phasing out the common meeting space.
You don't have to worry. It's happening.
It did. It happened. So this is from the article by Matt Taibbi. He says, in part, this is because the entertainment business remains mired in high vigilance mode when it comes to pandemic restrictions, with an omerta still hovering over vaccine-related questions. Robbins himself was with the program early, which he now seems to regret. I was guilty of everything that I came to understand was not healthy. I demonized people. So this is him. This is big deal. He's doing this. I think this shows a lot of character. However, he soon began to wonder why certain rules were being kept long after they lost real-world utility. For instance, deals struck in 2021 between studios and powerful unions like SAG-AFTRA, the Directors Guild of America, and Actors Equity barred the unvaccinated not just from working, but from auditioning. This made sense when the vaccines were thought to prevent transmission, but now? I get it. I understand the fear. I was there, Robbins says, but we've restricted people from working for too long. Now, I have to say the YouTube science is that the vaccine does slow transmission and contraction and is safe and effective and keeps you from getting seriously ill or hospitalized or death. And that's the YouTube science.
Yeah.
But he's saying what the Pfizer executive said in front of the European Union, that they didn't even test their vaccine to see if it did stop transmission. They didn't even test it.
So went down the rabbit hole of seeing the thing they said.
And so they were concealing that information, which means they were lying to us, and we were instituting mandates on false information. And so now I get it. I understand the fear. I was there, Robbins says, but we've restricted people from working for too long. Mostly he's warning about a didactic meanness he senses creeping into both politics and art. So there were no bigger COVID holes in the world than the people in the arts. The people in theater, the people in film, the people on Broadway. There were no bigger asshole authoritarian than when it came to COVID than the people in the arts. And they weren't following the science, and they were doing it because they thought they owned the Trumpers, because they see Trumpers as existential threats to them because of their liberal policies around everything from trans people to gay people to all that stuff. They saw them as fascists, so they turned into fascists to fight fascism. So people in the arts and the theater world, in music, television, film, they turned into the thing the authoritarian fascists they thought they were fighting against. By being for the vaccine mandates, you're actually for authoritarianism. You're not fighting fascism. You're actually fighting the people who are fighting fascism. He's felt this didactic meanness that Democrats had around COVID policy. He felt especially this during the COVID-19 period when we drifted from mere health policy into a bizarre freak-style collective shaming reflex, stressing the moral and mental unworthiness of people who, for whatever reason, there were many, refused official advice.
We're also going to get into the story where Joe Rogan was proven right again. Proven right about what? Well, there was a claim made on his show that the episodes of myocarditis and pericarditis were equally spread amongst people who were vaccinated and unvaccinated, kind of pointing back to those issues coming from COVID in the first place, the illness that escaped the lab. But now we find it's almost zero people who are unvaccinated who are having this situation. And the myocarditis and the pericarditis is basically confined to people who have had some sort of experimental gene therapy injection over the past couple of years. So vindication on that front. Once again, we'll have that story later tonight. And also the body cam footage from the Pelosi break-in has been seen, but it has not been seen by the public. So even though there are now yet another description of what happened that night, if it's nothing to be seen there, why does the story keep changing? And why is the district attorney going with a story where Paul Pelosi opened the door with the left hand and here's body cam footage, and the feds are going with the original thing that didn't describe the scene? Why is there a difference in those two stories to this day?
Well, Jess, this all has to do with the moments, seconds really, just before Paul Pelosi was struck in the head with a hammer inside his San Francisco home. Now, there continues to be contradicting accounts of a relatively simple question. Who opened the door that night when San Francisco police arrived to the Pelosi house? Now, the Department of Justice says the two officers opened the door. That's according to a federal indictment filed earlier this week. But the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, in another court document that was filed earlier this month, said Mr. Pelosi opened the door with his left hand. So the question is, what really happened? According to a source familiar with the investigation who personally watched the police body camera footage from that night, officers knocked on the door of the Pelosi home, then backed away. And the video clearly shows Paul Pelosi open the door with his left hand, just like what was noted in the documents filed by the DA's office. Now, also as written in the DA docs, the source tells us the body cam video shows officers having a brief conversation with Pelosi and David DePape, that's the man accused of breaking into the Pelosi home, before DePape starts beating Pelosi with a hammer. We reached out to the Department of Justice for an explanation on its differing account of this seemingly innocuous issue of who opened the door, but so far we have not heard back.
The other big point in Grand Theft World history this week was Elon Musk brought back this idea of supporting his site with subscriptions. Subscriptions, blue check marks, $20, $8 ended up being something like that, somewhere in that range. And a bunch of people got on board. But then some people decided they don't like free speech. And what's the best way to end free speech? Go get one of these companies, impersonate them, say something incendiary to the public. And cause a $20 billion loss in that company and a couple other pharma company sectors like that.
A verified account impersonating pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly on Twitter has apparently led to a drop in the actual value of Eli Lilly, with a drop of about 5% or roughly $20 billion. If you don't know, essentially, Elon Musk has now opened up the ability to pay $8 to get a blue check mark on your account, so it appears you're verified, Well, this brilliant plan has led to all sorts of parody accounts from all sorts of people. A lot of hilarious results. This was one of them. We are excited to announce insulin is free now. So this, of course, is not the real Eli Lilly official account, even though to any passerby it may appear to be. But that is what was tweeted out. The real Eli Lilly account, which is LilyPad on Twitter, came out to say, we apologize to those who have been served a misleading message from a fake Lilly account. Our official Twitter account is LilyPad. After this tweet, though, I'll get to there's another fake account coming up. But Bernie Sanders here replying to the real Eli Lilly, saying, let's be clear, Eli Lilly should apologize for increasing the price of insulin by over 1,200% since 96 to $275, while it cost less than $10 to manufacture. The inventors of insulin sold their patents in 1923 for $1 to save lives, not to make Eli Lilly CEO obscenely rich. And I'll get to a little more on just the insane cost of insulin in a second here, but these are incredible facts, and people should really realize just how you're being screwed by Big Pharma and by private healthcare companies generally. But hours after the fake Eli Lilly Twitter account said insulin is free, another fake account popped up with this message saying, we apologize to those who have been served a misleading message from a fake Lilly account about the cost of diabetic care. Humalog is now $400. We can do this whenever we want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Suck it. Our official account is LilyPad Co. So here is a fake account bragging about the cost of pharmaceuticals. Now, this is the result of all this. Eli Lilly dives after fake Twitter account promises free insulin, takes its competitors, Novo Nordisk and Sanofi, with it. So all three have seen a drop in their share price. I'll show you that in a second. But here's the drop. So it's about 5% or about $20 billion. Now, I will give you real context here. So you see the drop here. You can zoom out. So this is over 5 days. Zoom out to 1 month. Doesn't seem like such a big drop anymore. Zoom out to 6 months, and you can see they're doing just fine. So this company, is not ruined because of this, but it is fun to see that drop. Now, here are the competitors. So Novo Nordisk, Sanofi also down. There's Eli Lilly.
And then Elon has to scrap these plans for free speech. So there's a battle internally, there's a battle externally, there's all these sorts of things going on. It's going to be interesting to see, does Twitter go out of business? Does he turn it after it goes out of business into $1 trillion company and bring it back? What's going to happen? Are these things intentional to bring the company down? Is it a plan? Or are these accidental and these are outside of Elon's planning for the future? We'll dig into that. But first, we got to get to Luke Rudkowski with his summary of this week in news. Let's go to wearechange.org's Luke Rudkowski with this week's report, and then we'll kick off the rest of the show.
See, that's our first votes, and that's the wonder of democracy, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. And I wanted to point that out to be a little bit of the crank in the room following Brianna there. Stay off social media, people, if you're trying to figure out, are there really issues with votings? Trust your local officials, trust us here, trust a news source that you know and trust to be honest about this. They're doing their jobs and they're doing it right.
Okay.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Trust your local officials, trust us here, trust a news source that you know and trust.
Yeah, trust us, said the pathological liar and snake oil salesman, and, yeah, no thank you.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions. We can get into the show and share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.